It's Fan Fiction Friday. Let's see what Mariners trades you cooked up this week. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, December 20th, 2024. This is Tidy Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Fan Fiction Friday, the show where we grade your Mariners trade ideas on the 20/80 scale based on creativity, uniqueness, and viability. Before we get into your trade ideas, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So, kicking us off here on Fan Fiction Friday is Seattle John, who has a deal with the Tampa Bay Rays, Tyler Lawlar, Logan Evans, and Ryan Bliss to Tampa Bay for Yandy Diaz. What do you think? Kind of feels light to me.
Yeah, this is kind of a classic, beauty is in the eye of the beholder type of trade, because if the Rays think that Tyler Lawlar can be an everyday first baseman, they probably make this trade. But I don't know a lot of teams who do feel that way, at least confidently enough to make a deal like this. And last we heard, the Rays for Diaz were looking for a major leaguer and a couple of prospects. I think at the deadline, it was one major leaguer and 3 prospects. Like, they wanted more for Diaz than what they got for Rosarena. And I think when you look at the talent that's being given up here, this isn't that. The Mariners would have given up more for Randy than the Diaz. Now,
right,
prices change, obviously, in this winter.
Sure.
There's an influx of first basemen available.
Yeah.
And not as many teams in the market for a first baseman. So that could change the prices a little bit. And obviously, when we say Tampa Bay wants a major leaguer in the trade, like, major leaguers can range from, like, technically Ty Lawlar and Ryan Bliss are major leaguers.
Mm-hmm.
But, so is Julio Rodriguez. So, what's the middle ground here?
It's anywhere from like Dom Canzone to Luke Raley.
Right. And so, again, like, is it possible that the Rays really like Lawlar and they think that he can just basically be, as valuable as Diaz for the next 6 years, starting tomorrow? If they do, then they probably make this deal. If they don't, then I don't think there's enough, juice in this trade for them to accept it. So it does feel a little light, but it is one of those things where it's like, hey, if the Rays really like Evans and they really like, Lawlar, then yeah, they might take this deal. But I just don't have a feeling that is going to be the case. I think you need to add more here.
Yeah, I feel like you need to replace one of these guys. I feel like 2 of these guys work in this deal. Evans feels like a Tampa Bay Rays type of pitching prospect. I think they might like Lawlar, or they might like Bliss. I mean, Bliss does kind of feel like a Tampa Bay guy to me, more so than Lawlar does. But I feel like Michael Arroyo or Harry Ford has to be in this deal.
Well, and Tampa has a lot of middle infield talent that is, big league ready or about to be in the big leagues. So Bliss would be, potentially could be a very short-term thing for him. And I mean, heck, they still have Jose Caballero, and Caballero is probably who you hope Ryan Bliss turns into. So yeah, I think Bliss is probably the guy that you'd have to replace in this deal with a, more of a needle moving prospect. And that would be like Ford or Arroyo or Ty Pete, who we've heard repeatedly the Rays really liked a few years ago. So I think it's somebody like that, somebody with more upside than Bliss. I think it's because you give them the major leaguer in Lawlar, and then you give them the upside play with like a Pete or Arroyo or somebody like that. So I think that's the move here. If you want Diaz, and maybe they want Gregory Santos back too, or maybe that's the big leaguer they want, then whatever. Like, I think there is a deal to be made to go get Diaz. I just don't think that you're there yet.
Yeah. I'm going to go 45 on this.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So Aiden has a deal here with the Diamondbacks, Mariners send Bryan Woo, Colin Snyder, Tyler Lawlar, and the competitive balance round A selection, so pick 35 in next year's draft, to Arizona for Jordan Lawlar, Ryan Nelson, and Dre Jameson. This one's pretty fun. A lot of notable names going back and forth here. But if I'm trading Bryan Woo, I need a proven major leaguer back. Now, Jordan Lawlar's really, really fun prospect. One of the better prospects in all of baseball. He's ready now. He would potentially play, one of the positions that you have a need for right out of the gate. But yeah, if I'm trading one of these starters, I need someone that's established. And that's not this. I mean, Ryan Nelson kind of, but Ryan Nelson isn't the prize here.
No, but Ryan Nelson is a perfectly good number 4 starter.
Yeah.
5 starter. So
yeah,
you are getting the Woo replacement in the deal. And obviously you're getting Lawlar, who probably is your opening day third baseman, but certainly can play shortstop in the long run, and you can move him around the infield a little bit, and he's a really good prospect. So, I mean, Snyder, obviously I like Colin Snyder. He's, at the end of the day, he's a reliever, and the Mariners find those guys. They found Colin Snyder literally on the scrap heap. Yeah. And the odds that he repeats what he did last year are pretty slim anyway. So he's fine in this. Lawlar, whatever. I mean, I'm not the biggest Lawlar guy in the world right now. And you're getting Jameson, who is hurt, but has pretty good stuff. So really it's Woo in the comp round A pick, and it's better than bulk, but it's not irreplaceable, pieces of your ball club here. So it's Woo in the comp round A pick for Lawlar and Ryan Nelson. Feels a little light for me to trade Bryan Woo, but I do like Nelson. I do like Lawlar a lot. And kudos for being creative. You threw in the comp round A pick. Bryan Woo is not a pitcher a lot of people are talking about trading right now. And you found a deal that I would you found a trade that involved Bryan Woo that I'm not immediately saying no to. So that's pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, I'll go 55 on this.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not super realistic, so that kind of knocks it down. But in terms of creativity and uniqueness and all of that, it's interesting, and it's not something that we've considered. So you have to give it props for that. So yeah, I think 55.
All right, we are going to grade more of your trade ideas in just a moment. But first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Rocket Money and Select Quote. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/LOCKEDON. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/LOCKEDON today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Fan Fiction Friday. We are reacting to and grading your Mariners trades. Blake has a deal here with the Mets, Luis Castillo and Trent Thornton to the Mets for Jet Williams, Ronnie Mauricio, and David Peterson. I'm not interested. In a vacuum, This is fine for Castillo. Like if the Mariners were rebuilding or, they're just selling, sure, fine. But they're not. They have a very specific criteria that needs to be met here in order for a Castillo trade to really make sense for where they are right now. And this isn't it.
No. And as you might imagine, a lot of the trades we received this week were Luis Castillo. And it was a pretty good week for trade submissions. There were quite a few that we left behind. So good job on that, guys. And quite a few of you sent multiple trades, but we were only going to pick one per person. Including Blake sent multiples. I think most of the people who we did pick did send multiple trades, but again, we're trying to keep it as fair as possible, get to as many different people ideas possible. And there were a lot of ideas this week and a lot of good ones. Shout out to the guy, I should have pulled it. We didn't end up using it, but shout out to the guy who went down to the exact dollar figure of money they wanted the Padres to include in a Jake Cronenworth trade. Like $24,857,731. I was like, damn.
I mean, we asked for specifics. Like, we don't want you guys to just be like, and cash or prospects. Like, we do want specifics.
And so I almost threw that on here just to be like, this is what we're talking about, guys.
Well, it doesn't have to be that specific, but
no, like you could have just said 24 million, but hats off to the guy who went and did the math and all that.
Sure.
He knew exactly what he was willing to pay Cronenworth, and he found the money. So
yes. Yeah.
I mean, kudos to that guy or that person, whoever sent that in. But one thing I noticed, getting back to this, is that a lot of fans still don't seem to understand how to value Luis Castillo or how the Mariners are going to value Luis Castillo. Because I saw a lot of trades where the Mariners were either, trading Castillo where the prize were prospects or guys who have a cup of coffee in the big leagues. And I saw a lot of trades where the Mariners were giving up, like it was like Castillo and Cole Young and Harry Ford for, basically a Randy Arozarena type of hitter. And it's like, no, you guys, this isn't what the Mariners are going to trade Castillo for. One thing I will say about this deal that it has going for it is I am starting to get the sense that the Mariners want Luis Castillo's replacement to also be in any deal. Now, it's not going to be a pitcher as good as Castillo, but they want that because they know they have to replace Castillo and they know that they don't have those options in house, and any money they save basically is going to get eaten up by whoever they have to get to replace Castillo. So I do think you're looking for somebody who hits, at the top or the middle of the order and a viable major league starting pitcher. I think that is kind of the baseline that the Mariners are looking for. This trade, I like David Peterson fine, but Jet Williams is a prospect. He cannot be the headliner in this deal. And, Mauricio is fine, but he's basically a prospect and there's a lot of risk there. So I don't think this is too much risk for the Mariners to take to trade Luis Castillo.
Yeah. I think it's dead on arrival for that reason. So 35.
Yep.
Adam has a deal here with the Dodgers, Luis Castillo to LA for Gavin Lux and Bobby Miller. So Lux obviously been connected to the Mariners. Makes sense. Play second base. Had a good second half of the season this past year. Mm-hmm. What I'm getting hung up on here is Bobby Miller, who you and I have talked about coming off of a really bad year after a really good year. if the Dodgers land Castillo with what they've done in their rotation now, adding Snell, they're going to get Ohtani back in the rotation. They'll have Glass now. They'll have Yamamoto. Like that's 5. Right
maybe
there.
Roki.
Right. Yeah. Maybe Roki. So but they would at least have 5 guys here, 5 legitimate starters if they added Castillo. So Miller would be on the outside looking in, theoretically.
Right.
Would they not necessarily give up on Bobby Miller, but
yeah. I think the question for me is do the Mariners even like Bobby Miller? Because like the changeup might be the best changeup in baseball. It is filthy. The fastball, despite the fact that he throws at 100 miles an hour, gets crushed. Like it's not a good fastball. And the Mariners, they value fastball value. Like you look at their rotation right now, every single one of those guys gets value out of their fastball. Miller doesn't. So is Bobby Miller even the type of pitcher that the Mariners would want? He's cheap. I mean, he's controllable, and he does have, one season of very good performance and one season of not very good performance. Gavin Lux he's an average everyday big leaguer. That's fine. I mean, he's more of a platoon guy. You don't really face him when facing lefties, but fine. He's a 2-win player. Like that part's fine. But so what it really comes down to is Lux doesn't carry. He can't be the headliner in a deal like this. So essentially what this deal is like the Dodgers are offering like co-headliners, and both of them have had extremely like high highs at the major league level, and they've had extremely low lows. So you're taking a bit of a risk here. But you are getting 2 big leaguers. You are getting, the Castillo replacement in theory. And you are getting your second baseman for at least the first half of this year. And he's got 2 years of club control left, and you're still clearing about $20 million in this as well. So it's interesting. Yeah. It feels very fringy to me from the Mariners perspective. And I don't know if they like Bobby Miller because, again, the fastball is not a good pitch, and the Mariners place a premium on getting value out of your fastball.
Yeah. So I don't know if they like Bobby Miller, and I don't know if the Dodgers would move Bobby Miller in this deal. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting. It's thought provoking. It's obviously a couple of names that makes sense. And Castillo makes sense for the Dodgers, especially if they lose out on Sasaki. Yeah. But even if they get Sasaki, I mean, again, we've talked about the 6-man rotation idea here in Seattle with Sasaki. Obviously, the Dodgers, if they had Castillo with Glasnow, Ohtani, Yamamoto, and Snell, they could absolutely do that as well.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I'll just go 50 on this because I'm unsure.
I feel pretty good about the idea that the Mariners don't value Bobby Miller enough to make this deal because, again, like fastball value matters to the Mariners. It's why there's a couple guys at the top of the draft that the Mariners can now take advantage of who have plus fastballs that gives them a real shot to be in the big leagues really quick. I feel like in this particular deal, the Dodgers would need to give a little bit more. And I'm not talking about like, an everyday player, but like, can you get like Alex Freeland, I think is a prospect who's, good, solid average prospect, like average 50s across the board. Can you get that type of guy added into this deal? Can you get a reliever? Can you get Dustin May or another arm that's really interesting? Maybe. But yeah, I think I'll give it like a 45.
We are going to grade a couple more of your trades here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Yeah, you heard that right. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Fan Fiction Friday. We got a couple more of your trades to go over here before we head into the weekend. John Stanton hates the Mariners, which again, not just this person's name, but also a factual statement. Ryan Bliss and Michael Morales to Minnesota for Willie Castro. And hey, Justin Topa as well. That's fun.
I think it can't be Ryan Bliss. Twins pretty set in that they have Brooks Lee, they have Royce Lewis, they have Carlos Correa. They at this stage they still have Julian. Like they're pretty set in the infield. So Ryan Bliss, I don't think does a ton for them. Now, if this is like Ty Locklear, maybe because that might be their Santana replacement, and so it's also possible that Castro just gets traded for nothing because we get to January, February, and Castro's still on that roster, and the Twins are like, look, I mean, we tried, we can't get anything for him. So Castro's a weird fit because the Twins should be able to get something for him. He's a pretty good player who's going to make less than $7 million next year. But yeah, I don't think Bliss does much. Now, it's possible they look at Morales as the prize of this trade. So yeah, I think it's in the ballpark.
That's kind of how I was viewing it.
Yeah,
to be honest, yeah.
I think it's kind of in the ballpark of like what I would pay for Willie Castro. Topa, he was hurt last year. He's nothing more than a throw-in. I think he's actually going to make it like $1.5 million this year too. So he's making a little bit of money, but not anything significant. So this is probably
him. So
right. This is probably at the like upper end. Like if you take out Bliss and put Locklear in there, that's probably like the most I would pay for Willie Castro. Right now, talk to me in February when I'm staring down, Dylan Moore being the opening day second baseman and Austin Shinton being the third. I might be willing to pay a little more, but right now, this is about the max I'd be willing to pay. So yeah, 45 to 50, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I think it's fine, but just don't know what the Twins are going to do, what they want to do.
I'm not sure if the Twins know what they want to do.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just they're a really hard team to gauge for me.
They just let Max Kepler walk for $10 million.
Yeah. So, I feel like I can't give this more than a 50. But I'll go 50. Last trade of the day comes from Brandon. Brandon has a deal here with the Rays, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, and Pete Fairbanks. Oof. The big three of the guys that we think the Rays might actually trade this offseason. Yeah. For Cole Young, Logan Evans, Ty Pete, Tyler Locklear, Michael Morales, Mitch Garver, which Brandon says evens out money coming back a little bit, can back up Jansen / take some DH at bats against the left-handed pitching in the absence of Yandy Diaz.
Still feels this is very bulky for the Rays, and if you're going to insist on them taking Garver back, like the Rays still save money on this deal because Garver basically pays for
either Lau or Diaz.
Right now, there's like a $3 million, $2 million difference. So it pays for like a third of Fairbanks or whatever. But like, yeah, essentially this pays. So you're still adding like $10 million, $12 million to your payroll, which means Tampa Bay's, retracting that. But it still feels like it's too much bulk, especially if you're going to insist on the Rays essentially eating some of the money that you're acquiring. So I feel like you need a co-headliner here with Cole Young. Now they like Pete a lot, but I think if you replace like Morales with like, I just don't think you're getting this deal done without giving up like Laz in the package. Like, cause you're not giving up Colt Emerson. You're not giving up,
but there's also a lot of risk here. Fairbanks had the lat thing. And then
Lau obviously,
Lau has the injury history, which I've heard has made a lot of teams hesitant in terms of going after him.
Not to mention he's kind of a platoon bat.
Yep.
And Diaz is 34, who hits a lot of ground balls. So it's a first baseman who doesn't hit for a ton of over the fence power.
Yeah.
Like in a bulk deal, I think this is pretty good. How much is Brandon Lau worth? Apparently not a ton right now. This was just, like one of the ways you kind of try and break it down, but it's really tough to break it down. Like, is it like Cole Young and Logan Evans and like Locklear for Diaz? And then it's like Morales and Garver for Lau or for Fairbanks. And then Lau is like a throw in. Like, how do you I feel like Harry Ford needs to be in this trade. I feel like either Laz Montes needs to be in this trade. Like, and because we talked about this earlier, because the Rays have so much middle infield, depth already. You probably replace Cole Young with like Laz Montez, and then you add Harry Ford instead of, I don't know, Morales or whatever. Then I think you're onto something here. But it does feel a little light. Feels a little bit like trying to sell bulk as quality. Mm-hmm. But the Rays sometimes take bulk.
Sure.
And Lau is probably a drag on this trade more than he is an asset in this trade. So you might be in the ballpark here.
It's not a very realistic trade, but it's fun. No. I'll give you a 50.
Yeah.
There's some issues with it. So
yeah. And I think the unrealistic nature of it cut to, 12 hours from now. But
sure.
I feel like
I'd take it.
Yeah. I feel like it's probably like a 45. I think the realism grade drags it down.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tidy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tidy Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.